Hello, I'm Mr. Wilkinson, and this is Biologicool. Today we're going to be talking about the levels of organization, how we can think about all of the different things that affect life from the smallest atom to the entire planet. As we go through this, you should have some kind of worksheet or some kind of paper with you that you can write in with us. You should write everything I write down. That'll help you retain the information that we talk about today. So we'll begin with our topic at the top, the levels of organization. So biology is a survey course. That means that we're going to cover a lot of different things in order to make sure that we know what scale we're talking about, how big, how small we need to be focusing on. We use the levels of organization. Today we'll start with the smallest thing that we're really going to talk about, and then we'll move up to the largest thing that we're going to talk about. Now, here's your caveat. There are smaller things in existence than what we're going to talk about with the levels of organization. So the levels of organization can continue on even further than where we're going to have it. There's also larger things than what we're going to talk about in the levels of organization, because there are larger things in the universe than where we find life. We'll start with an atom. An atom is the smallest indivisible unit of matter. If you take atoms and you put them together, then they will make molecules. Molecules are any kind of group of atoms that are chemically bonded with one another. We see this a lot in biology because molecules make up macromolecules. Macromolecules are simply very large molecules. So you can even put molecules together to make even bigger molecules, which are called macromolecules. Macro means big or large. And there's a category of macromolecules in biology that are very important called biomolecules, and we'll talk about those later. So macromolecules can then be used to make up the components of cells called organelles. Organelles mean little organ. They were first described as the organs inside of cells. So organelles then obviously, well, we draw a little line down here, make up cells. And cells are really, really important. Cells are the smallest unit of life. If you remember from our last video, you need cells in order to be considered a living thing. You have cells making up your body. In fact, all of the cells that are making up your body group together to make up tissues. Tissues are simply a group of cells that are working together to form a same kind of function, like your skin tissue or your blood. These are tissues. Tissues can come together to form organs, like your heart, or your lungs, or your skin. Organs can form together to make up organ systems. Organ systems. Organ systems are like your circulatory system, or your integumentary system, or your skeletal system. These organ systems all come together to make an organism. An organism is any living thing. You are alive. You are an organism. If you group a bunch of organisms of the same species, of the same kind, together, then you will get a population. A population is a group of organisms of the same species. If you group a bunch of different species together, a bunch of different populations, like let's say you have fish and birds and squirrels, then those populations will be a community. A community is a group of different species all living together in the same area. So far we've only been talking about biotic factors, really, from cells all the way up to community. Notice below, the organelles, macromolecules, molecules, and atoms, they're not considered living things. Once we get to cell, then we have living things. We have biotic factors. Once we get to community, the next step is going to include the abiotic factors. But before we talk about that, I want to be clear here. Populations are smaller than communities in biology. When we're talking about sociology, you might think about yourself and your community being smaller than your population that you're a part of. That's a different field of science and a different field of ideas. For biology, when we say population, we mean that's the group of species, of one group of the same species. When we're talking about communities, we're talking about a group of different species. And so communities have to be larger than populations in biology. This is one a lot of students confuse, so make sure you get that one straight. Now, communities and their abiotic factors, all of the different things around them that aren't considered alive, like water and air and temperature, those communities will then be making an ecosystem. You might have heard of different ecosystems: a forest, a river, your backyard. All of these are ecosystems because they include living and non-living things, biotic and abiotic factors. If you get a group of ecosystems that share similar climates, we call these ecosystems biomes. You've probably heard of these biomes, like the savanna or the rainforest. And if you include all of the biomes across all of our planet, you would get the biosphere. The biosphere is the largest thing we can talk about in biology, really, because that's where all of living things are. There's no known life forms in the rest of the universe. It's just Earth. This is where all the living things are, which is pretty incredible if you think about it. So we've been talking about the levels of organization, which give us this idea of how big or how small we're talking about. So as we go from atom up to biosphere, we're gaining in size. We're getting larger. So atoms, molecules, macromolecules, organelles, then we get to cells, the smallest living thing. Cells make tissues, which make organs, making organ systems, which make up an organism. A group of organisms of the same species make populations. A group of populations make a community. A community with the abiotic factors make our ecosystems. Ecosystems sharing similar climates make biomes. And all of life everywhere is the biosphere. This is the levels of organization. I'd like you to take a moment now and write a small paragraph about why it might be important for us to think about these different sizes of the levels of organization.